Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 258 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, we cover the important topic of how to help your team feel a sense of purpose in their roles. Now, of course, it's not your responsibility to make people connect with their purpose, but we can do things to help them find it, and hopefully you'll feel a surge in motivation when you can help your team members do that. So let's get into the episode and talk about how we might do that right now. So feeling a sense of purpose is very important when you're coming to work each day. And it's one of the major reasons why I changed from a normal career into leadership coaching and training, because I feel that sense of purpose. Now, I believe that leaders have a purpose built into their roles already to lead and support their people. But for team members in many organizations, a sense of purpose can be harder to come by, especially when the work is not overly significant or interesting. So in this episode, I'm going to take a look at why a sense of purpose matters and some practical ways to help your people find it. So you might say, well, is a sense of purpose really that important? Well, purpose is included as a major factor in several motivation theories and models. One of them is Dan Pink's Drive, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes page. That'll be thoughtfulleader.com/258. Now, it also shows itself as the concept of task significance in the foundational job characteristics model. That is, the degree to which someone can see the impact that their work has on the company, the team, or customers. I also see purpose coming up as part of the status driver within David Rock's SCARF model. Status can be achieved partly by doing work that is meaningful and being perceived as someone who is making an impact. Now, even if you go back as far as one of the motivation theories as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I believe that esteem, which is status and feeling valued, and self-actualization, which is trying to be the best version of yourself, these needs relate to having a clear sense of purpose. Now, I'll put links to all these things in the show notes page. I won't explain them all now. You might have heard of them already, but if not, check out those links, thoughtfulleader.com/258. So as you can see, there are links to the importance of a sense of purpose reinforced by research and theory, but theory is only one part of the equation. Personal experience should not be ignored. When I've felt particularly motivated in my career, I've felt that I was doing significant work that made an impact. I also felt like I was a key contributor in that work, not just a tiny cog in a huge machine. Or I felt like I was having a positive impact on people because I was helping or supporting them in some way. Now, you've probably felt the same types of things during your career, so why not provide those things to the people who work for you? And if you go back all the way to episode 84 of this podcast, How to Give Your Team More Meaningful Work, that's an episode of a similar theme here, but slightly different, so check that one out. So the first thing to note here is that having an inspiring company vision or strategy is simply not enough. Sometimes I speak with people who are working in companies with a strong vision and mission. Now, this might include working to improve the environment, eliminate poverty, achieve the next medical breakthrough, or some other worthy cause. Now, you might think that people in these organizations are loving life and full of motivation and energy. Now, this isn't always true. Having an inspiring vision and strategy is not enough. It's very easy for people to feel disconnected from the purpose of a company, even if the purpose is significant. Now, I find this happening when people are doing uninteresting work, putting up with a chaotic work environment, dealing with politics, or being provided with little freedom in how they operate. This disconnect also happens when a person's work is distant from the true impact of the company. For example, a nurse who is helping patients can easily see the impact of the work they do, but an accountant working for a hospital may not have that degree of visibility because they're quite removed from the actual frontline work that is going on. Now, the point here is we cannot rely on our company's inspiring mission to instill a sense of purpose. We also need to cultivate it in different ways. An inspiring mission or vision is one ingredient, but the work environment and the work itself are critical ingredients in helping people find their purpose. And there's a related article that I'd encourage you to check out as well. Why no one cares about your company values and how to fix it. That will be in the show notes page as well. thoughtleader.com/258. Okay. So theory is nice, and I've mentioned some relevant models earlier in this post that link to a sense of purpose in some way. But as with everything, we need to turn this theory into some sort of action for it to be useful. So here are some practical ways to help your people find their sense of purpose. And the first one is get to know your people. The best starting point to help people find a sense of purpose in their work is to find out more about them. Now, instead of playing the guessing game, it can be worth understanding more about what they like, dislike, value, and are interested in, as well as their potential career direction. Now, what surprised me earlier in my career was that even interests outside of work can make a difference in the workplace. People often bring a mixture of unique interests and talents, and when we can harness these, we can see greater motivation and commitment. Not everyone is going to feel a sense of purpose from the work itself. So if we broaden our perspective of what people can bring to the team, we may find that we can build that sense of purpose in alternative ways. In one case, I knew a person who was trying to improve her public speaking skills, who ended up creating a public speaking group within the company. While this wasn't directly related to her role, it helped her to build a network and harness her enthusiasm in a way that benefited others in the organization. Another example I've come across is someone I know who was working in sort of project governance roles, but also started to build a career as a yoga instructor, yoga and Pilates instructor. Now, this person's able to do both, but I would imagine if you can bring that yoga and Pilates tuition into the workplace, that can be one way to bring what they're interested in outside of work into the workplace and harness that feeling of purpose as well. So don't just limit yourself to what you see at work. Outside of work interests can be harnessed for motivation as well. And that's why there's a related article as well, why you should prioritize that career conversation. You can check that out on the show notes page too. The second thing I'd suggest to help your people find a sense of purpose is to let your people lead something. People can lead from wherever they are. They don't need to have a formal title. Improvement projects are one of the best methods I've found to provide people with the opportunity to lead, especially if your people have identified the areas for improvement themselves. And if you look at your team, I'm sure you can find something that can be improved. It might be a process, documentation, the way a system works, or the way you provide services to others. Now, instead of taking the lead, let your people take ownership of implementing the improvement. They can plan it, work out who needs to be involved, collaborate with the required people, and then execute or oversee the work. Sure, you might need to help them with some of this, but you'll play a supporting role rather than the lead. Now, this can help people feel a sense of purpose because they are undertaking a pivotal role that contributes to the improvement of the team rather than just working in it. They have the autonomy to decide what to do, and they're making an impact that will last longer than today. The improvements may remain long after the person has left the team. The third thing I'd suggest is to connect your people with the customers to provide that sense of purpose. Now, as I alluded to earlier, it can be hard to find a sense of purpose if you're disconnected from the work of the company. Now, many teams play a supporting role within their organizations rather than interacting with customers directly. And I was certainly a manager in many of those sort of teams. And that's why it's important to connect your people with the work of the organization by helping them to see the impact. Now, a few years back, I worked in aged care for a couple of years, and I spent a lot of time running corporate projects where I didn't really engage with the people or customers on the front line. Then when I took on some projects that directly impacted the people delivering the front of house services, the whole situation became a lot more real and purposeful for me. Now, this might mean having your people directly hear from the customers that they serve, or taking them out and about to see the different parts of the business operating and clarify how your team fits in. Because when people can more directly see the impact of their work, the better chance they have of feeling that sense of purpose. And that points back to that concept of task significance that I raised earlier, which is from the job characteristics model. Now, another thing I'd suggest is to help your people play their part in helping them find a sense of purpose. Clarifying roles and responsibilities is important for a high-functioning team and for cultivating a sense of purpose. Nothing is quite as demotivating as knowing that someone else is doing your work or that work needs to be redone because people weren't clear on the part they were playing. Ideally, what you want to do is remove overlaps between roles or specify what the overlaps are and when they occur. Even when people do play the same role, I find it can be beneficial for each individual to have something unique that they deliver as part of that role based on the skills or interests that they bring. Now, this can help them to feel more valuable to the team and differentiate the part they play. Nobody wants to feel like a pointless cog in a big machine. We want to make an impact. Now, I once worked in a management role where a junior employee assisted me on various tasks. On one occasion, I did some of those tasks myself because I had some time, it was convenient, and I didn't want to bother them and take their attention away from what they were doing. Now, I found out later that this was upsetting for this person because they valued the part of their job that involved helping me out, even if it was boring work. So what I'd done is I'd unwittingly trampled on their sense of purpose. So that was one example I found where I accidentally took away their sense of purpose. Another thing I'd suggest to improve the sense of purpose is to involve your team in decision making. Now, the more you can involve your team in the decisions that impact them, the more likely they are to feel like an important part of the team. People don't like to be told what to do, they'd rather be asked and have their say. Now, this can feel quite uncomfortable for some leaders because they may feel like they're giving up control and providing too much power to the people. However, the alternative is that people don't feel like that they have a voice and feel less committed to you, the team, and their teammates. So the more you can help your people feel like a valuable contributor to the team, the more likely they are to put in greater effort to help it succeed. And interestingly, this concept of letting go, you feel like you might be giving up control by not making all the decisions. But when you involve other people in the decisions, such as your team members, you're actually gaining control because they're more likely to buy in to what they come up with. And the last thing I'd suggest to improve or increase a sense of purpose in your team is to remove the barriers. Now, connecting with your sense of purpose at work is a somewhat aspirational goal, so we do need to treat it with care. And in many ways, it's optional, right? You don't need a sense of purpose to do your job, but you might do it better and with more commitment if you do have one. So we want people to feel engaged in the work they do, so we need to remove the barriers to feeling that sense of purpose. And some of the obvious ones that I see are people feeling like they're not paid enough, chaotic, uncertain work environments where change is poorly delivered, unachievable workloads with under-resourced teams is also a massive barrier to achieving a sense of purpose. And also dysfunctional politics, which impacts productivity and effectiveness, is a huge barrier as well. Now, fewer people will connect with a sense of purpose if you can't create an environment where you have the basics right. So you can't take accountability for people finding their purpose. However, you do have a part to play in helping them find it and create an environment to sustain it. The main barrier will be your own fears and insecurities, because part of this process is about letting go and helping your people step up. And you never know, supporting your people to find their sense of purpose might just help you to find your own. So the question for you is, how do you help your people to find their sense of purpose? What have you done in the past and what worked for you? Let me and all the Thoughtful Leaders know in the comments on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/258. And if you think I can help you with your team leadership challenges, you can always apply for a leadership coaching session with me. If you think it might be a good fit for us working together, you can do that on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/258. Thank you once again for listening. I really appreciate it. Spread the word, share this episode, and I will be back in the next one.